Would you rather close a big deal first or a small first deal? Let's start with RJ. Let me give you a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with big two. I'm never going to pass up the opportunity to make a significant amount of money, whether it's your first deal or your 21st deal. I mean, the opportunity to make that big pop right there should not have any sort of an impact on you negatively, unless you just are not sure of why you're running your business and what your goals are moving forward. If you have that big pop on your first ever deal, that should just set you up for success, because now we're probably answering that question a little bit differently than we just answered, because you do have resources. A lot of us are assuming, hey, on that first deal, you're probably lucky if you're making 5 or 6 grand. If you go out and you make a 50, 60, $100,000 pop, yeah, maybe now you can actually do what Steve said. You can't do it like to CJ's point. You can't go hire an employee if you just made $5,000. But if you make 100,000, yeah, you're probably looking at things differently. I'm going to advise you to go out and set up some systems and hire a coach to get your business set up. So absolutely the big pop right out the gate.
Okay. RJ, for the record too, I loved what you just said, so I'm going to vote for you if it's on the tie, okay? Let's take it to CJ. Let's go head up right now with the two champions.
Anyway,
yeah, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to take a small first deal, actually. I think real estate is an interesting business where often people who are brand new with, not a lot of business experience, quite frankly, we're left to our own vices, our own thoughts, our own expectations. And, hitting $50,000, $100,000 on a first deal, I think could really skew somebody's expectations of the business. That's not a common deal type that you're going to get every single month, every single deal. So creating expectations up front with the smaller deal and then building into, these larger pops of deals, I think is kind of the best way to go about that. So I would actually pick a small first deal, and then I'd figure out where the money resides and I'd start making the money and hitting those big pops as well.
All right. Okay. Not mad at that answer. For sure voting for RJ, though. The bigger the bag, the better. Steve, your opinions.
So, unfortunately, I agree with CJ here. We've seen what we've seen in the past is someone gets a big deal and they blow it, right? They start spending money the wrong things. They're spending it inappropriately. They're not a good steward of the capital. And what ends up happening is they buy some guru product that they haven't vetted, or, they're doing the Lambo thing that RJ recommended earlier, right? And you have it's the MC Hammer effect, right? Or the TLC, where you get all this money and you blow it all, right? So I think having a small deal, what you really need is you need a first deal, right? A first deal, if it's small or big, if you get a first deal, it's proof of concept. So a small deal solves that issue. The bigger deal is when you start squandering, and I've seen so many people make a big first deal and then just blow it all, and their expectations are skewed for their next few months.
Okay. And let's close it out with Leon Barnes.
So I'm going to go slightly a different way on this question. As I read it, the first time I read this question, I thought of, are we talking about a big deal in regards to how many moving parts there are on the deal, or are we talking about big profit? Because if it's something that's simple and easy and it's big profit versus small profit, I'm taking big profits all day. But if you're looking at a deal and it's hairy and there's lots of moving parts to it, then I'm taking the smaller profit that fits more in my wheelhouse as a real estate investor. So what they said is all true, although I think RJ is right. I'm taking that bigger profit all day. But when it comes to if it's a big deal in regards to a lot of moving parts, I'm taking the smaller profit on a smaller, easier deal first to learn from out of the gates.
Okay. Floor is open for any points to build upon with each other.
Why would you guys take small profits on normal deals? I'm blown away by that.
No, I'll give a thought on that, man. Look, I've seen so many people do their first deal. Thankfully, I've been able to teach a lot of people how to do their first deal. People that I've seen that have done huge deals as their first deal, 30, 40, 50,000, it's always harder to keep them on track. I mean, you're talking about, it's like taking an 18-year-old that comes into the draft and handing them a $60 million contract. We can't have the expectation they're going to make great decisions. It's just not real form. So I think giving somebody an opportunity of a smaller deal gives them the ability to work into a mode, that grind that's really needed to get to this level of real estate.
Yeah, I think
based off
it's
of
the expectations.
go ahead, Steve.
No, I was gonna say it's the expectations, right? Like their work ethic's gonna be a little bit different, right? I think if they have to work hard for that first deal, they're gonna appreciate a little bit more. If it was easy and it's a giant profit deal, then they might think, oh, I can take it easy because like all my deals are gonna be $50,000 deals, and then just not working it the way they need to work it.
But based off of this theory that y'all are spitting right now, you're saying that you don't know anybody that's gone out and made $5,000 on their first deal and then made mistakes afterwards. I mean, that's
Of course.
right. And so my point is,
RJ, if I give you 50 grand, you're gonna go buy a lot of ice skates. All right. If I give you 5 grand, you might get one pair and you might get Cassie a pair. All right. I think 5,000 is just easier for people to manage starting out.
I disagree. I think having the cushion there and the ability to actually survive when you really don't know a whole lot, it doesn't mean that suddenly because you made money, you're going to spend it frivolously. I mean, you're going into their mindset and their understanding of how to run a business. But I would much rather tell any of my students, I hope you go out and you make 50,000 on your first deal than 5,000, because I don't want to say, hey,
of course, we want them to make as much as possible on their first deal, but we're talking about realistic. We're talking about them being realistic and what we would think would be the best option. I personally would rather make less or see somebody to make less. Do we all want to make as much as possible? Sure, but
I think
how many times we go to that and hit a home run?
they'd be praying for more success if there's more struggle in the beginning. That's where I'm going with this. If it's too easy in the beginning, they're not going to get the right habits. They're going to screw up, and then it's going to be harder the rest of the way, at least for the rest of the first year.
I think that's unfair. I think that's unfair to that investor, because you guys are you're blanking and approaching it and saying that everyone that gets a big deal on their first deal is going to frivolously spend that out of the gates, and I don't think that's fair.
In fact, I would say having not enough funds could actually be what creates the bad habits. Having funds available to you where you can actually create processes within systems that you can now afford would allow you to create positive habits moving forward. I don't think that's fair to say.
Could we agree, RJ, that most people that get into the business don't have a lot of money when they start wholesaling, don't have a lot of business experience when they start wholesaling, don't have a lot of that discipline, a lot of those principles that you're speaking of? So sure, you make a lot of sense with somebody that has that experience, but I think we could all professionally agree the majority of people getting started inside of wholesaling do not have that level of experience or that level of discernment when it comes to managing money, different things like that. I mean, let's just be brutally honest, right? Like, why does a lender have a draw system? A lender has a draw system because if I hand you $100,000 to use for that rehab, it doesn't matter what experience you've got. If you've been dicking around on other rehabs and robbing Peter to pay Paul, it doesn't matter about your experience. It doesn't matter about any of that. I don't know that I can trust you with that money yet. So I think people just got to build into that.
This also allows them to go out and hire someone like Steve Trang to help them learn how to convert leads. It allows somebody to hire Chris Jefferson. I mean, I don't know why they would actually do that if they really I'm the only one here saying I want you to make money.
Great points all around the board. Great points all around. I have to say I'm still Team RJ on this one, but I don't make the decisions. Really quickly before we close out the voting poll, I wanted to highlight there was a comment here from Bam Bam 704. He said, from firsthand experience, the first checks can affect you bad if you've never had money before. Good point. Great point. All right. And the voting is closing out, and it looks like we've got a second round for Steve Trang, the self-proclaimed Sherpa that you need on Mount Everest.